Kid.
Oh yeah. I tell everyone I grew up with the rich dad, poor dad, with the rich dad. That whole mindset. If you read Robert Kiyosaki's book, he's talking about his, dad told him, don't take a job for the lessons you're going to learn. My dad told me the same.
Hey guys, before we start, drop a like, follow, and subscribe.
Coming in hard. Welcome to CEO Confessionals, business talk for entrepreneurs, real estate wholesalers, investors, and lenders. From beginners to rising starts to moguls. This is CEO Confessionals with Thomas Heil. CEOs confessing their highs and lows, telling you what it takes to be on top.
Hey guys, welcome to CEO Confessionals. I'm Thomas Heil, and today's guest is Adam Morales, a serial entrepreneur in the barbershop space and the real estate space. Adam, welcome to the show, man.
Hey, Thomas, thank you for having me.
So, Adam, man, it's been a while. So, how's everything going with you?
Everything's been going good, man. Just kind of going through this whole pandemic, trying to get through that. Now, kind of seeing a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel with this mask mandate off. So that's a lot of people have this back and forth about it. You still, want to be protected, wear it. If you don't, you have the freedom to. That's the key right there. You have the freedom to choose whether or not you want it or not. So,
and thank God we're in Texas for that.
Yes, sir. Other than that, man, I've just been, operating the barbershops, keeping busy, staying with that, and then investing in real estate.
Really? Okay. So what got you into getting into the barbershop, man?
Well, I grew up in the business. My father acquired his first barbershop in 1986. That's Mike's Barbershop here in Houston by the Galleria. Okay. And so we started with that one. And then from there, I grew up in the business. So we actually, we had the rough start. Talking to CEO Confessionals, we had the rough start. He had a barbecue restaurant back in the 80s that went under. Uh-huh. And when I said went under, we went under. We were living in a 2-bedroom, 1-bath shack, literally behind the barbershop that we have right now. Wow. We lived there for at least 4 or 5 years until the business actually grew and was able to purchase another home from there. So that was a very humbling start. And then from there, we grew to 5 locations. And then I started focusing on agriculture myself. So I sold a few locations here and there, and a few of them organically, because we were in the malls. We were in Northline Mall, we were in Northwest Mall. We were in, way out by Derry Ashford and Westheimer. So that kind of changed that shopping center. It's still dead to this day. So, those kind of just organically moved, or we closed them just for that. And from there, just dived into more of the agriculture, was running a lot of cows and stuff like that for a little while. And then when that market went up and down, then we started going back into looking at barbershops. And then I started to say, you know what, I'm going to start investing in real estate some more, really double down and concentrate on that.
So entrepreneurship has been in your blood since you're a little kid.
Oh, yeah. I tell everyone I grew up with the rich dad, poor dad, with the rich dad. That whole mindset. If you read Robert Kiyosaki's book, he's talking about his, dad told him, don't take a job for the lessons you're going to learn. My dad told me the same thing. He goes, if you want to start a business, can you go work in a business similar to learn it? Because that's what I did. I was a barber, and I went to the barbecue restaurant. When that closed down, I had a barber's license, so I went back to work for a barbershop, and I was working there, and the guy wanted to sell within a few years. So, give or take. So that's what he's always told me too. And the same thing is, create a job. Don't go out looking for a job so much. Once you get this skill, create a job for others and create an income stream for yourself and all that whole thing. So it was a very different upbringing for myself growing up and having all that influence. I remember being a kid, I didn't have Game Boys and all those things. We were sitting in meetings and I'm just there, coloring or listening along. And I guess at the time it was just kind of boring, but as I go on now, I start remembering, so that's what we were doing there. That's what he said. That's what this and that. So it kind of all came full circle, 30 years later, but still.
So seeing your dad, you mentioned the business went under multiple times, multiple businesses. Seeing that, how did you feel?
It's hard. It really is hard. I know that it was hard for my father as well, because I remember we had a very, very nice I want to say 5-bedroom, 4-bath, huge 2-story house in Nottingham Country in Katy back in the early 80s. And the barbecue restaurant now it's fully populated. But back then, Westheimer and Beltway, that Shell station right there, There was a bank there. There was nothing out there. That was country. Yeah. I mean, if you passed the Beltway back in the 80s in Houston, that was country. So they had a barbecue restaurant over there. And it was tied to an oil company. They had an office building there. So a lot of the oil people, workers and stuff like that would come in for lunch and then go out. And once in the 80s, when the oil spike dropped down, they lost a lot of customers and lost the business. And from there, we really went back down. I mean, like I said, we lived in that little shack house right behind that barbershop for a good long time. And I know that was hard. Mike was, probably 3 or 4 or 5 years old at the time. And I didn't know any better because, when you're that age, you don't, it does, materialistic luxury items, they don't really matter because, you don't miss them. You don't know them, you don't miss them.
Yeah, absolutely.
But for him, having a successful business beforehand and seeing that go under, that was hard for him. But, he was, what he's instilled in me is always, keep that work ethic, keep fighting for it, keep going. And I think that's like a hard thing a lot of entrepreneurs need to understand, that, yes, you may go through failure after failure after failure. I mean, we can probably have like a whole week's podcast or a month's podcast on every failure that I've gone through. But keeping the energy to go through it and start again and again is where you're going to find success.
So at home, when your dad lost job or pretty much lost everything, was your mom around at the same time? And
yeah. Oh yeah, my parents had been together for 50 years. Unfortunately, my mother passed away of stage 4 pancreatic cancer in 2017. But they were both fighters, both willing to go through it and come out on the other end winning, both of them.
Okay, excellent. So that's awesome, man. Your parents, they were entrepreneurs. Your mom, was she more of a supportive role? Was she also leading from the front with your dad?
She was a managerial side, sort of kind of like the same structure that my wife and I have currently right now. So, I do a lot of the big picture stuff, and I'm going out and, making these deals and getting these things done, pushed it forward, always thinking ahead. But I need somebody to go through day to day and kind of help me with day-to-day operations. So she's, manager for Mike's Barbershop, and she's manager for the 46 and 2 barber shop that's over in the Energy Corridor. So she's been helping me a lot with those. And that's how they did it, because, that's how they knew, they've been together for so long, and say, hey, this is what we want to go for. This is what we want to strive for. So they both kind of, like you said, got up front lines and went out there and did it. And I guess us seeing that too, who, kind of followed the same successful thing we grew up with.
Yeah. So just like a lot of entrepreneurs, there's always the person that is like always thinking ahead, moving, and they call it the visionary.
Yes.
Would you say your wife right now and also your mom is more of the integrator of the business? They make stuff happen?
They have the ability to make stuff happen in a better way. I've gotten to the point where I'm very like cut and dry. Like there's a lot of no bullshit. Like, hey, let's just get this done. And I'm kind of like that with my employees, but sometimes I like to have, I don't want to say their ass kissed, but they want to have like that feel of, how is your day going? How is this and that? I don't give a fuck about that. I'm like, hey, let's get this done. This is what we need to get done. Let's do it. So she has the ability to kind of drive them a little bit better, keep that, day-to-day stuff going, keep them kind of on the same path. And, so yeah, she's more integrated than I am.
So I find it very unique. Like, especially, when it comes down to businesses, you see it a lot of generational. It's like when the parents are entrepreneurs, the kids are more likely to be entrepreneurs. When the parents are whatever profession is, their kids tend to follow that same direction. Seeing your parents struggling, pushing through, also having the highest of the highs and lows of the lows. With you and your wife, are you guys going through the same cycle that most entrepreneurs go through? You have your very high points, then your low points, and you keep on getting, nothing is really consistent. Are you guys going through that as well?
Oh yeah, definitely. That's something that, everybody goes through, and that's some of the hardest parts for a lot of people. And I think that's why sometimes a lot of people, marriages and stuff, can't make it, because of the fact that, the other party doesn't understand that.
Okay.
There's been times when, for example, we went through and I've always had a ranch. So we've had 500 acres.
Okay.
We're running 100 head of cattle there in Damon. So in 2017, I decided to start, expanding into that more and more. So we purchased another place in Waco, another 700 acres. We leased another 120 acres in Victoria. And we kind of went out and threw a bunch of bank loans for cattle at 250 head. So that was another $200,000. That went well. The problem was, like Warren Buffett says, don't take out money to invest in a stock that's going to go up and down. Yeah. We jumped in on the high side. We jumped in when actual cows itself per head. So one cow was bringing $1,500 through the trading floor on a wholesale side, you would say. So through the auction. And typically it was $5,000 to $1,000 before, the few years before, and it went up to a high. So we invested on the high side, and we had a bunch of loans on that. And as soon as that went down, our evaluations, everything went down. We lost like $100,000 in evaluations, 150, like overnight, like that's down. And it was just hard to make those payments because we had the same price points as being, the $1,500 cow going through there, and it wasn't coming out. So we had to scale back and sell off a lot of the assets to satisfy some of the bank, renegotiate some things, and it came to being pretty tough to get some of these bills taken care of, some of the day-to-day stuff, some of not gonna lie, there's been a few car repos and a few things here like that, just for the things that happened. But I look at it as that, hey, we were in a position to try, and we tried, and it was a lesson. Now we take that lesson back to not invest on the high side, get it on the flip side or on the low side. When things were coming out of everything is when we should have really started getting the money together and started picking up. We should have maybe acquired those leases and kept on them just enough to pay the bills or on a cash sense. And then as soon as the market started falling down, but no one can predict the market, but as soon as the market started falling down, it's when we should have capitalized on it more, and then we would have been in a lot better position now. Or if we would have been smart enough to do it like a few years before, jump in it on the low side, let everything go up high, and then sell. But it's hard to.
So tell us a little bit more about the cow trade. Like, I'm very ignorant towards that, and I'm pretty sure most of our guests that are listening to it, they're very ignorant towards how cattle works.
Well, cattle is a commodity. It's traded on the stock trade as a commodity for beef. And then on our end, so I always tell everyone we're the beginning stages of what you get on the table. So we have the cows out there on the land, and they're having babies. Their babies are our profit. So we take the calf, raise it up to about a minimum 400 pounds up to about 600 pounds. And that usually takes about 9 months till they're born, and probably an additional 6 to 8 months after that. So that's when they're ready for market. We sell. And we should be doing a little bit differently to capitalize a little bit better, but we sell at our local auction. In our local auction there, you'll see plenty of guys. It's going to be the same cowboys over and over and over, every week, every day. And they are the feedlot buyers. So they're the ones that actually go and work for the feedlots, and they'll build on the calves. And once they get 100, 200, thousands or whatever that they need to fill their orders, those go into the feedlots, and those are the ones that are fed up to 1,000 pounds or to however much they want to grow them out. And those what goes into the slaughterhouse and then into what you're gonna have on the table.
So when beef prices go low, is it because of oversupply more so, not just necessarily demand?
It's oversupply, yes.
Okay.
Yes, and a lot of the feedlots and the meat packers, they control a lot of the market. So you go to HEB, and we were looking the other day. My wife and I were on a tour with our nutritionist on HEB, and we were looking at the Wagyu beef, and it's $6.95 a pound. She goes, I go buy cow cheaper than that. I said, yeah, you can buy the Wagyu beef cow.
Yeah,
we're probably paying a few dollars per pound for the animal as compared to what you're paying there. But we never see that on our end because we're the beginning stages of it. We may see something close to that if we were more into the growth side, that feedlot production side, but it's a whole nother animal and a whole nother business that's going to require a lot of work. So I just like having more of for me, it's passive. So I enjoy the ranch. We're on the river, we're on the San Bernardino River, so we have hogs, we have deer, we have horses. So it's a hunting, recreational, and then the cattle is another income stream for ourselves as well as a tax deduction. So for us, it's passive, and that's kind of how we've operated for so many years.
Okay, interesting, man. So the entire farm business is always interesting. I have a friend that actually owns a large ranch, and he breeds deer.
Wow.
And one of his deers actually won like the best of show. And I realized, like, hold up, there's a best of show, kind of like how how dogs have it. Well, they did for deer.
Oh yeah.
And he won, and he told me that he's selling deer semen for like $3,000 a vial.
Oh yeah. Well, last year I think it was 2019. I think it was because they didn't have rodeo this year. Last year at the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo, they have a commercial bull and heifer sale, and we go there every year. And last year I bought 2 bulls out of there, and they range from I paid about $3,500 for mine. They were a little bit on the lower end side that year for some reason, But I mean, there's bulls that go up to $8,000 to $10,000, and like you said too, they'll sell semen for those guys too at $500 a pop, $1,000 a pop. It all depends. Genetics. That's what they want.
It's crazy. Like I went to Japan for one of my previous career as a management consultant, and I had a piece of steak.
Mhm.
I forget the exact name. It's like ragu. It's like the very, very top-notch steak.
Akashi.
Akashi, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Akashi, that's it. It's from a region right there. And it costs like $250
Oh, yeah.
for a very small piece. But when
Like a
it came
little
in my
6
mouth,
ounce steak or something like that.
yeah. When I tasted it, it just melted in my mouth. Probably
Oh, yeah.
it's something that I'll never forget, that taste. It was just amazing.
Yeah.
And I learned the story about it where they're playing music, giving the cow like giving the bull or cow, whatever it is, hops beer, IPAs.
Really?
Yeah. So I found that
Wow.
pretty interesting. They do it and massaging and music. So it's like a whole shebang of all
Wow.
those things they're doing for that animal to eventually get slaughtered. But dude, it's like premium grade.
Wow.
And I do know right now they did ship some cows from Japan
Yeah.
to Texas, and Texas is one of
Mm-hmm.
the biggest states that have it.
Yeah, we do have Akashi beef here. I'm not sure exactly what area in Texas that we do. We do have Akashi beef raisers out here.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you own a ranch. That's one stream of revenue.
Yes.
You have the barbershop.
Yes.
So now you're also in real estate. Tell me a little bit
Yes.
more about that.
Well, I want to say, how I got into real estate, first of all, was, of course, my father. He had, I think he had 3 rental properties there in Rosenberg, because we lived in Rosenberg for a little while, at a very, very early age. And he had a few properties there, and he actually had a manager that worked for one store in Galleria and one store there that were his tenants. And I saw that growing up, and I, saw the goodness of having, houses and whatnot, and started getting into it. And then I started, like everyone else, seeing people, get more popular with the flipping houses and things like that. And I've always had a love affair with construction, big car guy, always building things on the weekends, things like that. So I've always had the knowledge and a love affair of just constructing various things. So I kind of got into it, but how I got into it was kind of interesting. So I started really just hustling. Back to the ranch. So in 2015, 16, and 17 is when I was really started focusing on that. But I really started hustling, buying and selling, trading cattle.
Okay.
So we would go through an auction and we would find some that were probably a little bit malnourished or just didn't have they may have had some worms or stuff like that, little things that we could doctor. So we would bring them home, doctor them up, give them a few months on good grass, good feed, good everything, and they would turn their body condition around. So they would gain weight, they would look smoother coat, they would be better, and thus they brought more value. So we would buy one for maybe, say, at the time was more, I'd just get cheap numbers. So $500 is we would go to the auction and would buy one. We would invest the time and money into them. So maybe we'd have $300 or $400 in the animal. But at that time, we were turning around and selling them for $1,000 to $1,200. We would package them up together or sell them individually to different people that were wanting it in the market, because the market was hot at that time. So I was buying and selling and trading cattle, doing about $1,000 a week, just doing that whole thing. So I had some extra income, and I said, you know what? I'm gonna invest in real estate. I've read so many books. I've seen some other people do it. So I just picked up a few books on how to invest in real estate, started learning the language of money, and I started cold calling just houses that I saw and hard money lenders. So I finally found one deal here in Needville. It was $35,000 what I paid for the house. I put $45,000 in it, and I sold the house for $90,000 afterwards.
Wow. So did you do a lot of the work yourself?
Some yes and some no. So at the time, we still had the Northline Barbershop, which was our 45 and airline. And a lot of my employees' husbands were in the trades of HVAC, construction, and whatnot. So at that time, wasn't much work around for some reason. And I had 2 of those guys say, we're willing to come from Houston all the way out to Needville. And it was about a 45-minute ride for them to come out there. Hey, but they worked. And I paid them per hour. And, I just got all the material, got all the stuff, put all the things together, kind of gave my design and everything that I wanted for the kitchen, selecting colors and all that, and put it all together. So I had an active role, but I really wasn't necessarily doing as much. But we went through and completely rehabbed the house.
So now it's how many deals are you doing right now?
At the moment, I've got 3 deals on ready to close for this week. So back in 2018 is when 2017, no, I get my numbers wrong. 2019 is when I really started back into the real estate game all over again.
Okay.
So I took a little time out.
So what's your main focus of it? Is it fix and flip, being a landlord, owner financing? What area of real estate are you really focused on?
Well, I started off in the flips, and I just wasn't in a position to really attain the properties to be a landlord. That was my overall goal. So we flipped a few houses, got some money together, and then we were able to start, doing more landlording. So right now, my main focus has been the rehabs to rental. So we'll take a property, and we have one property that we worked on that I actually found. It's just funny. It goes back to ranching and stuff. I found because I had another small lease ranch, little 200 acres right there at the corner of 1462 in Nord, and we would take the road down there, and I saw this abandoned, 1-story brick home, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, and it was there, and it flooded out. So I've seen it there for years and years and years. Try to find, do the skip tracing, try to find the owners and all that. Couldn't come up with anything, and seen a few times pop on HAR and couldn't get a hold of the broker, the agent, or anything. Finally, when I was really concentrating on reinvesting, it popped back up. So I purchased that house, and that was a house that we're just getting finished right now. We rehabbed completely, and we're getting that rented as well. So I've been focusing on those because, to me, I'm finding these properties that have been abandoned or, need some work. We're putting the work into them, building an equity, going in, refining them out, and then rinsing and putting in production, taking the money we got to refine, just keep rolling into the next deal and the next deal.
So you're doing the BRRRR method?
Pretty much, yeah.
So BRRRR, which means buy, rehab, rent, refinance.
Yes.
Very common thing in the industry. As long as you have enough equity captured, you could be $0 out of pocket. And in fact, you can even get money back doing the BRRRR method, which is So one of the things that as a real estate investor is like you make your money on the buy.
Yes.
How do you buy your properties?
I've been fortunate enough to find a lot of stuff in HAR.
Okay.
I don't go to Houston. I stick away from Houston because just so much competition. There's a lot of guys out there that, you go to these real estate meetings, everyone's in Houston and making hundreds and hundreds of offers on everything. I stick out to where my ranch is in West Columbia, Damon, West Columbia area. I stick out that way for 2 reasons. There is the Tenaris plant in Bay City, which is 20 minutes away. And then West Columbia Damon is 30 minutes away from Freeport. So, we're getting a lot of different stuff from Freeport. Yeah. We've got a lot of plants and stuff down there. So there's a lot of blue collar jobs in this area that's driving a good economy around here. As West Columbia, it's a small little town, but we have HEB. We have some pretty good big stores in there, some big chain fast food restaurants. So there's movement and growth down that way. So I stick to that over there. And being that I'm over there, I don't get the competition. So I've been able to go through on HAR and look up foreclosures, just look up different things in that area and find my deals.
Wow. So one of the challenges that I face, like I marketed towards these smaller towns. Mm-hmm. A lot of people, they want to sell.
Yeah.
But it's hard finding a buyer. Even on HAR. Yeah. It's hard. How do you find those niches? Like, okay, here's a location. I know people are buying in this area, having intimate knowledge of that location. What's the magic sauce in that area?
Well, for me, it's just I've always been in that area. So we've had the ranch from '96, so I know the area pretty well, familiar with it, familiar with the people down there, and kind of just invested time in just researching the market out there. And like the 2 things that I explained for, that's what's the driver over there for me to be over there. There's a lot of other little towns that are hard to, like, there's like Orchard and Wallace between Rosenberg and Sealy. I've seen some deals out there too, but what's the economic standpoint of someone going out there? They're going to really want to live in the country. Needville is adjacent to Rosenberg, and it's not far from Sugar Land. So if people, have jobs out in the Southwest area, they can still get the country lifestyle, but still be, 20, 30 minutes away from an actual real, city job, as you'd want to say, out that way. So that's why that area has been good. And then same with, some of the surrounding little towns of like East Bernard and things like that. But going out to even some of the smaller ones, sometimes it's hard, and it's hard to find comps. And this is one deal that I'm working on too right now. It's a 3-bedroom, 1-bath, and 1 acre. And dude's like, we see your value, but it's kind of hard to comp it out because there's maybe like 2, maybe 1 that kind of matches it.
Yeah, and I face that too. It's like always a challenge in how you want to skin the cat. One of the ways I look at is that, okay, what's the value perspective?
Yeah.
So the added value you could provide, and also look at
Exactly.
the area that is the demand. If the area has a lot of mobile homes, of course, you want to stick with that area. If the area has a lot of houses that were built in the 1980s, you probably don't want to make it look very modern. So it has to fit the neighborhood, and which is crazy. Like there has been properties that has been over improved in the area where predominantly it's all
Yes.
still looks like it's in the 1990s, and it won't
Yeah.
sell.
Yeah. No, exactly. You got to fit the market. You can't like, that's one thing that my wife always wants to go through and do these high end stuff. I'm like,
Yeah,
you're not living in the house. Okay. It's not for you. You're going to make sure that we're going to do it to market, to stay on budget. So people that see this house for 140, 150 understand that, that's what they're getting for. You put, luxurious vinyl, luxurious tile and granite marble, this and that, and, commercial grade appliances, you will never get the money back.
exactly. So, and that's where a lot of, especially new time real estate investors, they tend to over improve the
Yes.
property. And
Yes.
I'm guilty of it myself. I've done it myself. It was a trial and error. I learned not to over improve property. And, took a significant loss. But you know what? That was one of the best lessons I ever learned right there. And one thing about losing money in any form of investments, any real estate, even as an entrepreneur, you always learn from it.
Oh yeah.
One of the reasons why I relaunched this podcast to let people know the life of an entrepreneur. We have the highest of the highs, lowest of the lows. Can you tell me a period of time when you had a super low point and how you felt?
Man, a super, super, super low point for me was, I want to say after Harvey.
Uh-huh.
That was one of the first times where, we were out there. So I think prior to Harvey, we had this floods come from up north down through Texas. So, we're on the San Bernardino River.
Yeah.
And at that time, we were helping other people. This is the prior year before. We were helping other people by bringing animals onto the property and helping them, get away from the floods and whatnot. And so that was fine. And 2017 hit, and all of a sudden, we're completely underwater everywhere. Now, unfortunately, fortunately enough, we have our main house is in Sugar Land, so we're in a very nice area. So we had no water damage, no flooding, no nothing in our streets, but just the access to get around was terrible. And back to the ranch, that's when was a really low period because we had, just kind of started investing in more there, and we're hit with this major tragedy of this flood. And our ranch, we were flooded 4 foot of water through the whole 500 acres.
Wow.
And it took about at least a week and a half for the water to recede to where we were able to get in to check our animals. And then after, during the flood, we didn't really lose any animals, but it was the aftermath of, disease and stuff brought in from the water and everything that was just going through. And there's a hoof rot that, it's too much moisture in the hoof starts rotting the cow's hoof completely apart. That little toenail, you've seen the little ones that dogs chew on, but that little toenail will start separating from the actual, skin, and it makes them impossible to walk. And if they can't walk, they can't eat because they can't, they're grazing animal. We started getting a lot of that there in our herd, and we did everything we could to combat it, with doing our antibiotic shots and just watching them and just trying to keep them healthy as possible. We still lost at least 30 head, so that was a real bad thing. You would drive over there and go see and check on your animals, and you go through and you see these buzzards flying around in the skies. You're like, oh shit, there's another one dead. And you go through and you think it's one, and it's 2 or 3 of them side by side. And it's heartbreaking because you went and spent the time out there to do everything possible to keep this animal alive, and you couldn't do it. It's just they still died anyways, and it was very, very hard. And it was hard emotionally just by seeing all the animals, and also hard financially because we had just invested in that time to grow and expand Bar-M cattle to where I wanted it to be, and taking that leap and then seeing all these this death and this flood and everything it was a very, very low point in time, and it was hard
at that moment.
Oh, why the fuck did I do this? Just stay cutting hair. But
seeing
my thing was to really try to figure out why was it happening. like, okay, so we did all this preventative maintenance beforehand. So we were giving them wormer shots. We were giving them everything that, our local vet has suggested to do after the flood, but we were still having it. We're still having mineral deficiencies. We're still having different things happen. And we actually spent, quite a bit of time with our local vet, taking animals to him and having him do an autopsy where he just cut it open to see what the problem was. And there was still an inconclusive, 2 animals that we brought to him was still, tests came back inconclusive. So we could never understood why it happened. But it was, a big devastating loss, both financially and emotionally.
So how did your wife take this as well?
It got to the point where, it was heartbreaking to see the animals. And she wasn't out there as much as I was, even though she's, we have the ranch and forever, she's more a city girl, so she's not really out there hands-on like I am out there. My daughter and myself were more of the country folk. We got out there on horses and doing all the stuff we do. So, she was hearing what we were going through and hearing all the stuff and then seeing, the financial, backlash and trying to figure out what we can do to keep moving forward. And that's kind of where it all happened, where, it kind of cycled down from there.
So when it comes to the financials, how much did it really impact you guys?
Quite a bit, because we were at the high valuations when we jumped in, so we were paying high market value for the animals to get in with. And then when the valuations dropped down, they dropped down a little bit before then, but they dropped down even lower because there was an influx in the market where people were just, I don't want to deal with this cow dying. I'm just going to ship it off to the auction. So the feedlots were influx of so many older cows that they really didn't need, because they'll still butcher them and still that's what you get on the table as well too. Some of the older cows that just are not serviceable anymore for us. And so they had an influx of the market, just went even farther down with that, and it was a big hit. Man, I think we got into debt probably around $250,000.
Okay. Wow. With that, did your other businesses help you get out of that debt?
They did. At the time, at 2015, 2016, I had grown more into agriculture. Simultaneously, I also flipped 2 houses. And in 2017, as well as this whole flood, that's another thing I forgot to mention. As well as this whole flood and going through all that too, my mom was diagnosed with cancer and passed away at that time. So it was kind of like death loss after death loss after death loss. And so after that, it was hard that time, just to try to get things and make things get together, man. Now it's just like, whatever, fuck it. It was an experience, we get through it. We're happy from what we've done now, but talking about it now, man, it's just, it's kind of bringing a lot of this stuff back. But anyways, I stuck out of that time and jumped back into the real estate afterwards, and kind of, just took our losses and did the best we could. Negotiation with banks, negotiating my ass off, trying to get everything squared away and kind of bouncing back a little bit. Market came up a little bit more. We were able to meet some of the demands on our notes, and the barbershops, they helped some because they helped because they were still producing. They helped kept our normal living expenses as well. Cars and houses and light bills and stuff like that. That's what they helped with, and whatever we had influx, we were helping kind of float the note a little bit until I can really get something together to really kind of bring it down. And that's why I jumped back in 1819 for purchasing another barbershop and then purchasing another house to really get my real estate game going again.
So one of the things, like there's a saying, the master has failed more times than the novice has even tried.
Yes.
When it comes down to, this one was definitely a event that was an act of God.
Yeah.
Have you faced issues where it wasn't an act of God? It was because of poor planning, poor decision making, something that ended up in your failure because you failed on your own merit?
Yeah. Let's see. So, wow, let's go back. 2000 and So I'm, a big car guy. I'm starting to think back when Monster Garage and Jesse James and all that started came out. I don't know what years that was, like early 2002, 2004, somewhere around there.
Around that time, yeah.
Around that time. So I was a big car guy and I wanted to get into that. And I always saw him and I always had a love for building things. So I was always, building cars and got into welding, got into all that stuff. So in 2010, I decided to open up a shop. Actually, I have a card still right here. It's River City Hot Rods. And we were here in Sugar Land, and we were trying to build, custom hot rods and motorcycles. And
awesome.
I was doing okay. I actually hired 2 people, and we're doing well. And I acquired the guy next door to me who was a custom painter, and he was doing a custom paint jobs on motorcycles and doing airbrush graphics and all that. So kind of combined the businesses because they kind of went hand in hand. I would do metal work and things like that for his motorcycles, and he would bring paint and vice versa. So I bought him out, and I thought I was doing good. Doing really well, but it's kind of one of those things where he had a lot of debt that I didn't know about because I didn't do my due diligence. So that was first mistake 1. Second, I took on a lot of projects that required some money from us to get going until we were getting paid. So the cash income was low, and then managing both the employees and everything was not done well on my part. I became more of an employee in the business than the actual business owner. So I had the fun love affair of building the things and welding and getting dirty and trying to be like those fabricators like Jesse James. But I did not concentrate on the business. So the management side on the business was a failure. And it went good for a little while. We did well. We're trying to get our name out there. We didn't last too long just because, it just things were not right. Couldn't get things right on there. I didn't really understand how to, go from being behind the tools or behind the helmet and really try to manage business more and still get people to come in there. I knew the concept, but I wasn't doing it. I guess it was just much of a passion business than anything else.
So
after that, we went through. We acquired the motorcycle shop. I had someone that wanted to buy out the painting because they wanted to add painting to their business. He owned a car auto shop. So that went away. That kind of just got me out of that debt. And then I just wind up packing up all my tools, closing that business down, putting everything back in the garage.
So you just shut everything down just like that. Boom.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So what would have you done differently?
What I would have done differently nowadays, I would have concentrated more on getting the name out there. I would have utilized social media more now to try to get my name out there, to get paying customers in with deposits and work on an hourly basis and not by per job. So you would say I had one car that would come in and we were going to rush repair all the floor. Well, we said, we do it for like $1,000. And when it came down to it, we spent more man hours and $1,000 to get it finished.
Yeah.
And so try to get more money out of the customer was hard. So next time around, I would say this is a price per item. This is, we're going to charge $100 an hour. We're guesstimating, 1,000 hours or whatever, just something to numbers up. 1,000 hours we're going to do to get all the rust repair done. And this is what we're looking at. We're invoicing every 2 weeks and not every month, or not, hey, can you bring me some money here and there? So I have more of a precise billing system and invoicing system to kind of keep the cash flowing. So I'm not floating out of my pocket, my employees and shop bills and all that other stuff. So kind of keep that going. And then I would, maybe if I did get in the craftsman side of it again, I would be limited to maybe certain days only to maybe satisfy my need to create something, but then hire someone else that I knew that was a skilled craftsman to really concentrate on that job, to put somebody else in there. So for me now, I would step away, concentrate on bringing in an influx of cash and having that cash coming in, and then hiring the right people to do the job there. And then if I wanted to step in and play, I could. So that's what I would do differently.
So right now, it's obvious that you learn from your lesson.
Yeah.
And that's what enables you to succeed in what you're currently doing and leading towards that path of success. Your dad was also an entrepreneur. Did you ever see external counsel, like a mentor or anything, that will shorten your curve and also help you grow your business where you are?
So back in that whole time where things were shitty, really shitty, 2017, I remember that I was sitting. So my mother, her wish was to die at home. She didn't want to be in hospice. She didn't want to do anything. So I remember sitting there with her in the room and just watching over, to her last days. I was one of the ones who, was the one who saw her actually take her last breath. in that time frame while I was sitting there watching, I started getting on YouTube, learning different things, and I've bounced around from so many things. I bounced around from there's a guy on YouTube, How to Beast. At that time I came across, he was talking about how to be a man, things like that, different manlyhood things, and then he's kind of revolved his channel into more of exercising and working out, things like that. So I've been following him since then. Then I started coming across another guy named Dan Pena. Dan Pena was kind of he was accredited for taking $820 and turning it into $425 million with Great Western Resources here in Houston, Texas, back in the 80s. So they were an energy company back in the day. And the way he grew his company so quickly was through acquisitions. So back to growing up, and my father, when I said he bought his first barbershop in 1986, he's bought every other one since then. The one we bought had in Northline Mall, he purchased that one. The one we had on Derry Ashford in Westheimer, he purchased that one. The one we had in Rosenberg, he purchased that one. The ones that we grew into, like Northwest Mall, we had some car washes as well. I started those.
Really?
Those weren't really all that great as far as going in business sense. He acquired his. So when I started listening to Dan Pena, his whole model was exponential growth through acquisitions. So listening to this guy telling me all this stuff was clicking. Well, goddamn, this is what my father was doing this whole time. Because he told me, hey, it's better to buy something that's cash flowing than to start all over again, start from fresh. And I never really got that concept, because that was another business right there. The motorcycle shop, the custom shop, that was a start. I started a hair salon. I started a car wash. I started another barbershop. All those starts didn't go as far as I hoped to. So now my theory has switched to acquisitions. And when I started really listening to him, he started putting a lot of it together. Not only that, too, he changed my life, because he was talking about, if you want to think clearly, you need to, get out there and exercise. And that's when I started seeing my mother's health deteriorate. It was a motivator as well. And him telling me, hey, get out there, get in the gym, pump some iron, do some of this stuff. So, that time from now since then, I've lost about 100 pounds. I'm gaining more now, but, it's all muscle now, so. Yeah, I've done all this stuff and listened to this guy, so I credit a lot of success to him. And if you look him up, he's a very harsh, brazen guy. He's in your face, will tell you exactly what it is. He doesn't do any more seminars. He was doing seminars in the 90s, but now you can take his seminar in his castle in Scotland. So you can go live like a king in his castle in Scotland. But his seminar is right at about $30,000 for a 7-day session. And he goes, he wants you legit. He goes, you dress for dinner. You come wearing a suit every day. You learn how to live like a royalty, so you can actually get that flavor and get that sense into you and make you want to be more successful.
So, as you know, our podcast is very much focused on entrepreneurs, and we talk about the CEO confessionals. Yes. What advice would you give to aspiring entrepreneurs or the guys that are thinking about leaving their 9-to-5?
The best thing I can tell everybody is self-education and failure has been my successes. So I've always wanted to learn something. Like I wanted to learn real estate. I jumped in, started reading books, started getting more education on myself. And I went out and did it. That plain and simple. I just went out and did it. And I failed. My first house, yes, I did sell for quite a bit of money from acquisition to purchase, but I may have spent a little bit more on budget than I wanted to. I may have taken a little bit longer than I have. The second one, kind of the same thing. But I've learned from all those. They weren't failures, but they were learning. Some of the other businesses we went through too, those are failures, and I've learned from all of them. But I've failed and failed and failed, and I'm probably going to continue to fail. But that's how I'm successful. Just getting a little bit quicker at failing and learning and recuperating and moving on to the next thing and moving on to the next thing. So for all the guys out there that are thinking about doing it, just fucking do it simply, but do the self-education to learn what you want to do. And all this thing is, a lot of people say, oh, you can do anything you want, anything you can put your mind to. You can do anything you have passion for.
Yeah.
So if you have passion for something, get out there and do it. But don't wait. Learn what you need to learn. Self-educate yourself. Do it.
So summary, guys, fail forward and just make it happen. Just do it. Adam, it was a pleasure, man. Thank you for being on.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me.
All right, guys, we're signing off.